So whoever is the person who does this, who is active, will be awarded this at the end of the day, and we'll announce it at the end of the conference. We'll tell you a little more about our internships later today as well. Fantastic. With that, I will pass it on to Izzy. I'm just looking to see if our speaker is here, and we will then ask Izzy to introduce our first speaker for the day. Over to you, Izzy.
Hey, so I'm really excited to be introducing our first speaker. But first, I'd love to know just a little bit more about you guys. So how many of you are here today because you would maybe like to start your own business? You can let me know in the chat or give me a little react if that might be one of the reasons that you're here. So starting your own business can be one of the most rewarding experiences of life. And I'm sure that so many of you would like to become an entrepreneur in the future. But I'm sure a lot of you have also wondered about the daily grind of an entrepreneur. Well, today, for our first session, we have a seasoned entrepreneur ready to spill the beans. What's better is her organization is a business with a mission to promote equality. Please put your virtual hands together to welcome Sabreen, our first speaker for today. Sabreen founded PM Media, a digital marketing agency advocating for race equality after graduating from Oxford University with a degree in Arabic and Islamic studies. Since launching in 2018, PM Media has been helping grow brands in tech, music, food and hospitality, healthcare, and more from San Francisco to Sydney. Alongside running her business, Sabreen serves as a trustee for 2 charities and volunteers with state schools to offer Oxbridge application support. Sabreen will share her experiences for the first half of the session, after which we're going to open for a Q&A. So through the session, be thinking about any questions that you might want to ask. She also has a few interactive activities planned, so make sure you're ready to participate in those. And during the session, if you have a question you want answered, add it to the question box. And like Amaya said, you can upvote any questions that you want to have answered. So with that, I will pass over to Sabreen.
Hi, thank you very much. That was a great introduction to the day as well. I was kind of listening in for your warm-up session and introduction. So it's really cool to see how many different people there are from all around the world. I saw someone from Leeds in the chat, which is really close to where I am. So hi, everybody. So yeah, just to start off the day, explaining what it's like to be an entrepreneur. It's also really cool to see in the chat that a lot of people are thinking about it, but not sure. That's exactly where I was. I even throughout university, I didn't really ever think about being an entrepreneur. It's definitely something that came afterwards, but I'll get there. So first of all, an introduction of who I am. Can you see the slideshow? I'm just checking it out. Okay. So my name is Sabreen. I am the founder of PM Media, and I'm also the trustee for 2 charities. So that means that I kind of help with the strategy and governance of one national education charity and one more local mental health charity. And I also graduated, as you mentioned in the bio, in Arabic and Islamic studies. And I also had to put this in there because it's a huge part of my personality. I am a massive TV addict. And as much as I love books and films and music, I think TV is definitely my comfort zone and how I unwind. So what is PM Media? We are a digital marketing agency, and sorry, you've done a much better job at explaining what I do than I have. Founded by and for underrepresented communities, and that has really spanned so many different types of clients, which is always really interesting, and something I really love about being an entrepreneur is getting to work with so many different types of people, no matter what niche you choose to be in. So what I do on a day-to-day basis as a marketer, I feel like marketing is one of those things that people hear a lot, but they're never really quite sure what it is. And the truth is that's because it really spans so many different things. Like you can be much more on the tech side, or you can be more on the data and numbers side. And for me, I'm more of the kind of creative, visual and also strategy side. So on a day-to-day basis, I might do some brand design, so graphic design, logos, and that kind of thing for a client. Copywriting, which is basically writing everything that you see in communications, whether that's on a website, whether that's the social media, text or captions and so on. Content editing, that can be, again, graphic design or video editing. So all the social media posts that you see that are kind of edited professionally, that's kind of what I do. And also strategy. So that would be the long-term plan for how my client, whether they're a musician or a small business or a charity, how they plan to get to their audience and grow a community, grow a customer base, grow an audience, depending on what kind of client I have. And building websites, so that's both the web design, but also the back end of it. So making sure that they're search engine optimized, making sure that they're compatible with different types of devices, that kind of thing. And also something that I've been doing more recently over the past couple of years is training workshops. So that's for groups, or it can be for teams within an organization who want to learn how to use social media more effectively, or they might want specific workshops on developing a campaign and just helping teams figure it out for themselves. And then, so that's what I do in marketing, but as a business owner, this is something that might be a bit more general to everybody. So as a business owner, I have to handle the finances of the business, working with current clients. And so that's emails, meetings, making sure that they're happy with how things are going, and also coming up with new challenges within their business and figuring out how to handle that with them. Building a team. So, my business started with just me, but I've been liaising with different freelancers who are much better at all of the stuff like PR or graphic design and things like that than I am. So really building a network of freelancers so that I can provide a better service for my clients. Deciding our business strategy. So again, in the same way that I do for clients, it's about deciding what I want to do with the business and making sure that I have a long-term plan of how I want it to grow, how we're bringing money in, and also making sure that it aligns with our own personal values and making sure that it's really centered around why we exist. Developing our paid offers, so that can be services, but as I mentioned before, we've also introduced training workshops. Even with client work, sometimes clients prefer to do an intensive week where everything is kind of packed into 1 week, and sometimes they prefer to do like a longer campaign. So that might be an 8-week or a 12-week campaign where we're drip feeding all of the work throughout that campaign on social media to their audience. And other paid offers can be, a lot of marketing agencies also develop courses or digital resources and things like that. So they're teaching marketing on a wider scale rather than a one-to-one basis. It also involves attracting new clients. So you've got the steady flow of people coming into the business, and also everything on the first list as well. So making sure that we're really marketing our own business, because you have to be your own client first. So making sure that I've got all of my social media and marketing plan in place. So a little bit about my journey. Don't let the line put you off. It's not a straightforward thing at all. But my journey really started before I went to university. So even though entrepreneurship wasn't on my mind at all at the time, it was really where I started to learn the skills that I think came into play when it was time for me to become an entrepreneur. So it first starts in 2010 when I say failure in air quotes because it wasn't really a failure. I think we maybe misunderstand what failure is. It's not a failure to do something. It's more kind of an opportunity to do something else. So I applied to university, and I applied for a course that I was vaguely interested in, but it wasn't that it wasn't something that really spoke to me, but it was the subject that I enjoyed most at A-level at the time. And I realized halfway through my UCAS application that it wasn't actually something that I could see myself doing for the next few years. So I actually withdrew my UCAS application, and I decided to take a gap year. So within that gap year, I did some paid work. So I had a temporary job at a financial advisor's office, which again isn't something that I really knew much about, but it was an opportunity to learn a little bit and also earn some money, which I used to travel. I did some voluntary work in Morocco, and I also kind of traveled around to see friends in Europe, so Denmark and that kind of thing. And I also did an unpaid work experience in a human rights organization, which is very local to me. And yeah, within that gap year, it really helped me to, first of all, get comfortable with kind of going off the straight path that I had planned in my head, because in theory it's really easy to think you go from school to kind of sixth form or college to university, and then you get your first job and everything is just a nice, easy, straightforward line. But the truth is that I found that I quite enjoyed going off of that path, and I really enjoyed not quite knowing what I wanted to do and it not being all planned out for me. So that was the first step, and that should have been the first sign that I should be an entrepreneur, but I didn't listen to that at the time. 2011 I started university, and I feel like university was really the first time that I had to learn self-discipline. I am a massive procrastinator. By my kind of natural state is to procrastinate, but in 2011 I really had to, you know, self-discipline, self-manage, and learn all of those skills that again come into play when you're an entrepreneur. And then in my final year of university, I had quite a few friends who were musicians and dancers, and they were all part of the same society at university. I don't have a single musical or dancing bone in my body, so I was hanging out with them a lot and not really kind of a part of what they were doing. So I offered to help them with their social media marketing, or I think I was actually dragged into it. I didn't offer that at the time, but I was asked if I could help with their social media marketing to promote an event that they were doing and their society, to recruit new people who were in, it was an Indian classical arts society. So again, I had a huge respect for what they were doing, but I wasn't really a full part of it until I started this. And I quickly discovered that I really liked it. And because I really liked doing it, I researched a little more about it and taught myself and kind of made sure that I was doing a better job. So I think one of the keys of being an entrepreneur is finding something that you really like to do, because if you like it, you will want to get better at it, and it's kind of a positive feedback loop then. So I then graduated in 2016, and just before I graduated, I got my first job, which was in Oxford as well. It was a local education charity. It's an amazing charity, and I have so much respect for the work that they do, but it was a 1-year contract, and I decided not to renew the contract because my family asked me to move closer to home, so I agreed, and I moved back home in 2017. But during this job, I was the main employee. It was just me and another employee who was in Bristol doing the same thing. So it was quite an independent job, and I realized that I liked that autonomy of being able to kind of decide what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, doing a little bit of everything. So the accounts, the marketing for fundraising events or recruiting volunteers, just dipping in and out, liaising with schools and with the university committees and things like that. So it was a little bit of everything every day, and I liked that variety. And I really realized that I would probably struggle going back to how it was with previous jobs, where I had a boss that I had to answer to and who kind of decided what I was doing. So I think that was a turning point for me. So as I mentioned before, I moved back home in 2017 for another very similar charity job, which unfortunately fell through because of funding issues on their end. So they realized that they didn't have the expected income to actually be able to pay me. So I ended up being at home, not really having money or a plan or a job lined up. And I decided, rather than applying for other jobs, I was going to take this time to set up my own business. And as I mentioned, I'd been doing the marketing on the side and decided to just give myself a year to see how it went. And in that time, if I liked it, then I'd carry on. And if I didn't, then I would go ahead and apply for new jobs. So I took that time to really learn online and use all of the free resources I could find, which is a lot. In this day and age, we're so lucky to have so many free resources. And if there's anything that catches your eye, there is so much available for you to be able to teach yourself. So that is, again, another key piece of advice I would give, is to just really take that time to learn and take advantage of all of the things that you have available to you. And so I officially launched PM Media in 2018, but I had been doing some kind of paid client work for the first time, because obviously my broke university student friends who were artists and musicians were not paying me. So I got some paid clients within 2017, and then in 2018 I officially launched as PM Media rather than as Sabreen. And my journey from there, as with every entrepreneur, looked a little bit more like this. So it was not a smooth ride at all, and I don't think it ever really should be, because that kind of means you're playing it safe and you're not really growing. But as you can imagine, between 2018 and now, there was a pandemic. I had lots of different clients. Some were amazing and really helpful, and I learned a lot from working with them. And some were really terrible, and they were quite demanding. They kind of taught me what I didn't want, and it kind of felt like exactly like I didn't want to feel, which was having a boss who, not all bosses are terrible, obviously, but they were kind of, the worst types of bosses. And I actually learned more from those clients, because it really taught me what I needed in my business to feel like I was happy with how it ran. And then I also won an award, an entrepreneurship award, in 2021, end of 2021. So that was something, and then that's brought me to now. That's a little bit about my journey. And so throughout this journey, here are a few truths that I learned that were completely contrary to all of the things that I had been taught or had read and heard about entrepreneurship. So one of the ones that I really heard a lot was that the key to success is waking up at 5 a.m. every day. And this is something that I heard so much. There was even a book written about it, which I think maybe started this idea, which is called the 5 a.m. Club. And I'm sure it's a really helpful book and a really helpful idea to so many people. And I'm not discrediting that at all. But I am also naturally a very nocturnal person. And I think Amir can attest to that. Like, he's received emails from me very late at night. And I do a lot of my most creative thinking at night. So a lot of my design work and logos and web design work, I prefer to do at night. I just feel like there's fewer distractions for me. So obviously if I'm up till 2 a.m, then it's very difficult for me to wake up at 5 a.m. And also I feel like my brain just doesn't really start. Even if I do wake up at 5 a.m, it doesn't start until 9 or 10. So there wasn't really any point in me trying to figure this out. The reality is that the key to success is understanding your own productivity and how you work best, and building a routine around that. So this applies to studying as well. I wouldn't recommend having a nocturnal lifestyle as a student, just because you have to wake up for school anyway. So yeah, but understanding the following. So what times are you most productive? What days are you most productive as well? For women, our productivity is actually based around a monthly cycle rather than a daily cycle. So there will be days where you feel a lot more sluggish and less productive, and there will be days where you feel really on it and you can do 5 times more than you can at other times of the month. So that's something to think about as well. But for a lot of the time, I have noticed that I'm a lot more productive before lunch, and after lunch I just start to feel a little more sleepy. So that's something that I really try to get the majority of like the big heavy tasks out of the way before I eat. What are your favorite ways to distract yourself? So again, for me, TV is definitely something that I distract myself with. So making sure that that is not an option when I'm working, making sure I'm not in a room that has the TV, making sure I've closed down all of my Netflix tabs or Disney Plus tabs and things like that. And why do you procrastinate? So a lot of the time, we think that we're procrastinating because we're bored, but actually a lot of the time it is because there is something about that task that is maybe overwhelming, and maybe you need to break it down into smaller tasks, or maybe it's something that you don't understand about and you need to do a little bit of research before you tackle it. So that's something to think about. What motivates you most? So some people are more motivated by the idea of a reward. So if you get all of your tasks done for the day, then you get to go out with your friends. But some people are more motivated by the idea of missing out on something and punishment. So if you don't do everything that you're supposed to do, then you don't get to do that one thing that you're really looking forward to do. So yeah, just figuring out how you work and how your brain responds to these different prompts. And then a key one is, which environment are you actually the most productive in? So I think a lot of the kind of pandemic time when everyone was at home, people were like, oh yeah, I really like working in bed or on my sofa with my pajamas on and that kind of thing. And the truth is that's where you're most comfortable, not necessarily where you're most productive. I used to think that I could study better when I was listening to music, and I quickly realized that actually that's not true. I get distracted by the lyrics, and I just enjoy it more because I'm listening to music, but I'm not actually doing the most, and I'm not actually being the most productive. So yeah, something to think about. The second myth is that if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And again, this is something that I think is encouraging in a way, because it means that, you know, do what you love rather than just chasing the money and that kind of thing. But actually, no matter how much you love something, everything feels like work sometimes. So the key is understanding why it's starting to feel like harder work rather than it, not being right for you because all of a sudden it's feeling like work. So something to think about is, do you just need a break? Do you need to step back, get some fresh perspective, and maybe you're approaching burnout and that's the reason why it's starting to feel like harder work? Or is there something specific with this task that you're struggling with, and is that something that you need help with? Or you need to kind of break down again into small issues and figure out for yourself? Or what would you need to change in the situation for this to feel enjoyable again? So even within my 5 years of business experience, there have been times when I've thought maybe I should just pack it in and get an employed job rather than a self-employment. And during those times, it's because I've realized that I have failed to set specific boundaries. So maybe I'm working too much for something that I've underquoted for, and so I don't feel like I'm being paid enough for this work. And so the next time I take on a new client, I realize that I actually have to assess how much time this task will take and change that, so that next time it doesn't feel like it's dragging me down and it's harder work, and actually it feels like something that I enjoy again. Or when it comes to studies, for example, maybe it's the way that your teacher has explained something and you feel like you're just not getting it, and for you to be able to enjoy this subject again, you might need somebody else to explain it in a different way, and for you to not feel like it's an obstacle and it's something that you can actually understand and click with. The third myth is that entrepreneurs have to hustle 24/7, and this is something that you will hear a lot with kind of an entrepreneur bro type like business supposed expert, where they're always talking about the hustle, the grind, and about how, like, if you truly love what you're doing, then you will want to work that long, and you can't really ever shut off your brain when it comes to your business. And I think to an element that it will always be on your mind because it's something that you're working on and you're interested in and passionate about. But at the same time, if you are working 24/7, you're not really leaving yourself time, you're not leaving your brain time for new ideas and fresh perspective. And for me, without failure, every time I step away from my work and I take a break, that's when I'll have an aha moment about something that I'm struggling with, or I'll get a new idea, and it can be in the most unexpected times, like when I'm waiting for a bus or something like that. So yeah, it's just it's very much a key part of your productivity is actually taking breaks. So the name of this session is A Day in the Life. So I thought I'd talk through a typical day in my life. But the truth is, as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to say that you have 2 days that are the same. So I've got a few different examples of what a day in my life looks like. And again, this is based around a few different factors, like how much work I have to do at that time, or how productive and energetic I'm feeling at, during that time. And also, like I mentioned, I'm always kind of combating my naturally nocturnal lifestyle, which isn't really compatible with most people, because obviously you have to work within a certain kind of setting, especially if you have clients who work 9 to 5, and so you're making sure that you are compatible with their meetings and that kind of thing. So example 1, I might wake up at 8 a.m. If I'm feeling really active, I'll exercise, have a coffee, scroll on my phone for a little bit, and feel like I've, started the day in a really active way. This is obviously like the ideal situation. 10 a.m. I might write a strategy plan for client A. So that will be based around a previous meeting that I've had with them. I've taken the notes, and writing up that strategy plan is one of those tasks that takes a lot more of your brain power and energy. So that's why I make sure that I do that first thing in the morning. 12 p.m. I'll have lunch. This is something that is probably a constant throughout all of my days, is that around noon is just when I really need lunch. So, and that is because I do find that, like I mentioned before, I get quite sleepy after I eat, so I tend to just miss out breakfast, which again isn't something that I'm recommending to everybody. Everybody works in a different way, but that's why I kind of have a 12 p.m. on the dot lunchtime. And then I might have meetings in the afternoon, and then in the later afternoon just designing some social media posts, which is creative work, and it does take effort and brain power as well, but it's less intense than in the morning. And then 5 p.m, just as I'm wrapping up for the day, I'll prepare for tomorrow's meetings, do any kind of research, finishing touches and things that I need to do, and log off for the day. Example 2 might be where I feel less active in the morning, so I'll just do some kind of light life admin, replying to emails for other jobs and things like that, laundry, not necessarily one of those active exercise and coffee days. 10 a.m. I will plan a new service that I might be offering, or a new paid offer. So maybe if I'm developing these workshops, then I might be doing some kind of development for those. 12 p.m. lunch on the dot, and then 1 p.m. Editing some video content for a client. So again, that's one of those tasks that takes a little bit longer, and you can really deep dive into it. And so I usually leave that for the afternoon, because then it's a little bit less likely to be interrupted by other things. And then in the 5 p.m, I'll upload that and send it off, and reply to emails and do all of those kind of tying up the loose ends for the day. And then example 3 is a little bit more in line with kind of my natural rhythm, but again, this can change depending on the week. So I may wake up later on, obviously not at 12 p.m, but start off my kind of productivity for the day at 12 p.m, and then have meetings, do some design work and everything. And then because I have different clients in different timeline and different time zones, so I might log off and purposefully start later on in the day, because I know that I'll be working later that evening. So because I know that I have a 9 p.m. meeting, because that's the only time that really works with my client, who is 11 hours ahead, then I will make sure that I balance that out by taking some time for myself later, like earlier on in the day. So I'll have my meeting, and then I usually find that I'm quite wired after a meeting, so that is a good time to kind of harness that productivity again and finish off some other work. So I might do some logo design, and again, that means that I'm finishing off quite late, so I'll give myself permission to start later on the next day. So those are some very real and probably lifted exactly from things that I've done earlier this month, the examples of a day in the life of an entrepreneur, for myself, obviously, and the type of business that I have. But I'm sure you can see from this that one of the key benefits of being an entrepreneur is that you really get to pick how you work and the ways in which you work best. So that's definitely something that drew me to entrepreneurship, is just having that freedom to pick the best way that works for you. So with that in mind, I would like to take you all through an interactive activity, which is, I don't know how many of you do BuzzFeed quizzes, but it's kind of modeled on this system. So let's find out what your entrepreneur style is, and we'll go through a little bit of the details about what your entrepreneur style might mean for you at the end as well. So you might want some paper and pen for this, or you can put it in the chat if you like, but this is a multiple choice quiz, and we'll start off with question 1. So question 1, you're reviewing your to-do list for the day. Which task are you most looking forward to? So do you look forward to meeting with your favorite client? Are you looking forward to planning out a new income stream? So that might be a new service, a new product, a new digital resource that you're going to be selling online, a new coaching program, whatever it is that your business is centered around. C, are you looking forward to designing a logo for your business and getting really creative in that sense? Or D, are you looking forward to your homemade iced coffee break? Which I didn't include in the examples of a day in the life, but in summer is definitely a staple for me. So I guess in the chat, if you, okay, I see some letters coming in already, that's great.
Sabreen, I have a quick question. Do you want them to tally it in the end, so then it might be worth them writing it in their books as well?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
keep an eye on, keep an eye on for yourself about which ones you're picking, whether it's mainly 1 or 2 specific letters. Yeah.
So everyone, feel free to use chat, but also write it in your book so that you can then count it in the end. Yeah. Thank you.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Okay. Question 2. You're developing a business plan to pitch to potential investors. What is your main priority that you're thinking about? So A, researching the investor so that you know as much about them as possible. B, being clear about how we solve a problem and our projected finances. C, making sure that the presentation is bold, unique, and stands out visually. And D, making sure that investors don't want to interfere with how you're going to run things, and making sure that that boundary is clear. I've seen some comments in the chat, and I completely agree. All of these different answers are very important to entrepreneurship. So there's no hierarchy. One answer isn't more correct than another. It's just about all the different aspects of entrepreneurship. So don't worry about having a right answer at all. Cool. I think people are ready to move on to question 3, but I just want to make sure. So question 3. You're at a networking event for your industry. What are you most likely to be doing while you're at this event? Are you going to be A, making sure that you speak to everyone in the room so that they know what your business is about? B, are you going to be taking the opportunity to ask other people, other entrepreneurs there who are also doing the same thing as you, how they solve those problems that you're facing, and really exchanging ideas about that? C, are you going to be handing out your specially designed business cards, which show your brand style and are like an instant opportunity to show who your business is and your business personality? Or D, are you going to be listening in to other conversations rather than really participating and just learning about all of these different types of businesses because you'll sound so interesting? It's interesting that I see a lot of answers that are kind of 1 or 2 of the different letters, because I agree it's not really clear, and there are definitely times when you might be split between 2 answers. Again, like BuzzFeed quizzes. Question 4. You haven't made any money in your first 6 months. Now, this is a very common issue, and it's not something that is necessarily an emergency alarm, but it is also something that you want to fix quite quickly. So what do you do first to solve the problem? Again, you might do all of these, but what would you do first? So A, speak to your target audience to find out what the problem is. Do B, troubleshoot your sales page and troubleshoot your product, make sure that everything is glitch-free, there's no problems, making sure that if it's a physical product, all the packaging and everything is working right. C, rebranding the product so it's more visually appealing to customers because you feel like you have a great product, but it's just not, it's just that other people aren't seeing it for what it is. Or D, do you cut your losses, close down the business and start a fresh new one because it's just easier to start fresh? It's interesting seeing the different thought processes that people are going through. I feel like there's a lot of future entrepreneurs in here because these are very logical answers that people are giving. Question 5. TikTok street interviewer. I don't know if you've seen these TikToks where people approach somebody and they ask, you know, what do you do for a living? How much do you earn? And ask a little bit about what you do. So imagine you're on the receiving end of these questions and you're asked what you like most about your job as an entrepreneur. Do you say, I like getting to meet new people all the time and working with a team? Do you say B, I find it satisfying to solve problems and really analysing how to make things better? Do you say C, I love that I get to express myself creatively and create new things all the time? Or do you say D, I like that no 2 days are the same and I get to choose my own hours? Again, yeah, I agree. I would say them all as well because it is really all the different aspects of entrepreneurship. But if you had to choose one just to make things easy, or actually, you know, you don't really need to choose one because we'll go through all of the answers anyway. But yeah, so that's the final question. So we'll go through. And again, I don't know if in the chat you want to drop which one you're mainly, just from your tally in your notebooks. So mostly A people. So this is the people person. And again, at the bottom, it really explains the fact that entrepreneurs need to kind of be all of these different archetypes. So don't worry about whether you're split between a few different letters or whether you're mainly one. That just goes to show that your skill set, where your skill set is distributed. So with the people person, your strengths are that you're able to connect with people, a lot of different people very easily, from clients, customers, business partners, suppliers, employees, investors. That's a massive superpower for yourself. But what can you build on? So it's really important to not only be able to communicate with lots of different people, but to know how to tailor your communication to the right situation and to the right audience. And this is a key part, not just for you know, entrepreneurship or marketing, but just a general life skill. So I do highly recommend that you work on that. Not to say that you don't do that already, but it's just something to be very conscious of as you go through this entrepreneurship journey. And also remembering that communication is a two-way system. So it's all very well and good if you're confident talking to people, but are you able to ask the right questions and listen to learn feedback, which is really important for entrepreneurship as well, because it's really a cycle of feedback, improvement, asking questions and so on. So that's A. Now, if you're mostly Bs, then you are the problem solver, which again is a key part of being an entrepreneur. So for the problem solver, you are able to see a situation where other people might be frustrated and find it really just frustrating trying to figure this out, and you might want to other people might want to give up, but you're really set on getting to the root of the issue. Now, what can you build on? It's really important to remember that nobody can solve everything and every problem alone, and so you need to be able to learn how to find out where you can get help from, whether that's resources, whether that's a person, and figuring out how you can learn and solve a problem when you don't know the answer and it doesn't come as easily as you're hoping. Mostly C's is the creative thinker. So entrepreneurs need to be able to, you know, see a situation creatively and from new ideas. So you might be an artistic creative person, you might be an inventive creative person, you might be creative with tech and coding and figuring out a new way to come up with a solution in that sense. But what you can build on is being able to finish what you start beyond the creative idea situation. So what you're able to do is come up with the ideas, and that's the like natural inspiration that comes easily to you, but can you follow through and can you actually make that into a reality? And as an entrepreneur, it's really important, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur who's, you know, doing everything from beginning to end yourself. It's really important to be able to finish that completely. And also it's really important to be able to learn to separate yourself from the kind of feedback that you will inevitably get as an entrepreneur, because when it is your own creative idea, it can feel very personal, but actually you know, it's not that personal, and it is all about improving, and it does really help. And mostly D, the trailblazer. So you're a free spirit and proud of it, and that is exactly why you chose entrepreneurship. And for trailblazers, it is a really important part of being, you know, confident enough to make your own path and not just following what you think you should be doing. So it is, again, a really important part of being an entrepreneur, but you might not necessarily know exactly what path you want to take. So you need to use this time to explore your interests, and because any of those can be potential future businesses for you, but it also helps you to be kind of a more well-rounded person generally, and also get focused. So learn, you know, as we mentioned before, your own productivity and what works for you in terms of being the most productive. And it also means that when it comes to starting your own entrepreneurship journey, you are able to self-start and be disciplined in that way. So yeah, and I completely agree. I'm seeing the comments. I'm also a massive mix of all of these, and nobody really fits into one box very easily. So I completely agree. This is all advice, just generally life advice as well, rather than just entrepreneurship. And you can definitely take a little bit from each of these different personality types. So yeah. And with that in mind, is there any questions?
Great, thanks, Sabreen. There's over 100 questions for you. Obviously, we will prioritize a few of them, and we'll also extend the session by a little, if that's okay, so we can end it at 11:10, so that there's plenty of time for you to answer the questions.
No problem.
So yeah, I think Izzy will moderate. So over to you, Izzy.
Yeah, perfect. So like Amaya said, we have loads and loads of questions coming in. So remember, guys, to keep upvoting the questions that you want answered, so that we can get through those ones. The first question here is, in a saturated market, how would you suggest standing out and separating yourself from the competition? And in your experience, what have been the most effective strategies to attract people and customers to your online shop?
That's a really good question, actually, because it's something that I think a lot of people worry about. For me, I think it's not so much about doing something differently, but the way in which you do it is differently. So rather than having to come up with a new product, then it's really about what is it that you bring to this? Why is it that you want to do this business, and what's your story? That's always something that kind of sets you apart, because humans are naturally drawn to stories and storytelling. That's why we like films and books and TV and songs and things like that as well. But it's also a huge part of marketing and branding. So it's about why is it that you chose to do this? What problems are you solving for people? And the thing is, people only really go for one or two different options for a certain product or a certain service. So they aren't really choosing from 100, because they're not that, you know, that's overwhelming to pick from. So you're really honing in on who your target audience is and what their problems are, and speaking to that and their pain points. So, you know, Facebook wasn't the first social media platform. It was just the one that really had an interesting story, and it was one that knew that they wanted to target university students first, and they really expanded from there. So that's a really good way to start. It's just getting really specific.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. I'm sure that helps other people. So the next question is another really popular one. So a lot of questions asking what people can be doing now. So what young people can be doing now to get started, and how they can prepare for their future as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm hoping that some of the kind of tips from this presentation help towards that. But I would really say the key is to just explore your interests, and you know, get quite confident in trusting your gut and your instincts, because that is a huge part of being an entrepreneur. So rather than suppressing that because you feel like that is against what the kind of the plan is, really like kind of following those instincts and seeing what that possibility might turn into. I would also say, you know, just in practical terms, when you're at university, or even now if you're on in clubs and societies and so on in school, making sure that you're taking kind of a leadership role. And it's not about pushing yourself forward, but it's just about taking that opportunity to develop those skills. So maybe you want to be the treasurer for a society or a club, maybe you want to be the secretary, so you learn about kind of taking those notes and records and that kind of thing. And that really helps to again, get more confident in what you're doing, but it also helps to learn a little bit about what those different tasks that you have to do as an entrepreneur involve, because, you know, as an entrepreneur, you have to do a little bit of everything.
That's great. And the next question is probably quite related. So obviously you've given your top tips there for what students can be doing now. And is that how you learn your like business and entrepreneurial skills? What was your kind of journey there?
Yeah, so I did definitely just learn as I went along. So it was a lot of kind of learning on the fly and Googling things and figuring things out. I've done so many free hours of kind of webinars and online courses and downloading free digital resources and things like that. And there's so many, especially I think within marketing, because there are so many different types of marketers. But yeah, I'm definitely taking advantage of all of the free resources, and just there is a YouTube video or a TikTok video or you know, an article about how to do pretty much anything possible. So definitely take advantage of what there is available online. And I also kind of, yeah, just learned by doing it with clients, and I'd figure out what worked and what didn't, and then next time I'd be better at it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as well. I loved what you said about, you know, failures and opportunities and how people won't always get things right the first time.
Exactly.
So it's really great. The trial and error process, I'm sure, is something a lot of people can relate to.
Exactly.
Our next question here from Jayan is, what is your favorite aspect of your role as a marketer?
Oh, so for me, I really like getting to know what a client's kind of main goals are and getting to the heart of what they're doing. And because of the focus of my business, it's all about helping underrepresented communities. So I really like the fact that it's all going towards something that's very meaningful and important to a community. So, for example, earlier this year, it was about kind of increasing healthcare research for different, like, so African, Caribbean and South Asian communities, which are often left out of medical research. So it was an awareness campaign for that, and it really helps to kind of feel like you've got that job satisfaction and job fulfillment, because you know that you're doing something that's very important to other people. So that's an aspect of my business and the way that I structured it that I enjoy. But when it comes to actual marketing, I like the fact that it's a balance between the creative and the analytical, which is definitely something, like I did maths and humanities subjects for A-levels, and I was very much torn between both sides of that, because there are not that many university degrees that help you to do both at the same time. So yeah, I like the fact that I came to that later on in life in my career instead.
Amazing. The next question, so we've had a few similar questions asking about networking, which I think is maybe like a term that's thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions is sort of how studying at Oxford contributed to like your networking opportunities, if at all, but also some general questions about, you know, how students should be networking, how to like build a network, and like what is that skill and how can you use it effectively?
It's a really great question, actually, because it's so useful. And I do think that I learned how to network at university. I don't think it's necessarily an Oxford thing, but definitely being at university, you're around so many different types of people from so many different places and backgrounds, and just being able to ask about people and learn about people is a great way to, I think people always remember how you made them feel, not necessarily what you said. So making sure that you're interested in other people, but also having kind of interesting things about yourself to say as well. So it's not necessarily interesting, but people will remember you for specific reasons. Being in Oxford, which is a southern university, there are lots of people from kind of the south of the UK there. So I'm from the north, and so there was a lot of kind of comments about, you know, not necessarily because I was at Oxford, like encountered this from pretty much everybody that I meet who's not from the north, but just comments about my accent and, you know, being from the north and that kind of thing, and just being very confident about that. And I think networking is about showing who you are rather than trying to be somebody that you think people will be interested in. So that's a key part of networking, as well as being interested in learning, but also showing people who you are and being very genuine rather than like kind of schmoozing.
Yeah, that's a really helpful way to, I guess, demystify it a bit. Brilliant. And then we've got a couple of questions about what you should do. You know, like you talked a little bit about this idea of, you know, chasing the money, doing what you're good at. But how would you balance that with, you know, doing what you're good at and doing what you love? Like, have you found that something difficult to balance? What advice could you give?
Yeah, so I feel like when it comes to figuring out how to be paid for doing something that you love and something that you're good at, it's really important to remember that you can get good at anything as long as you put enough time and effort into it. So if you enjoy something but you don't know how to do it right now, putting in enough work. I'm miles better now than I was back in 2018 when it comes to my job, and that's because I've put in those hours and learned and figured things out along the way. So don't be afraid to kind of have that steep learning curve. When it comes to figuring out how to be paid for that, I think a lot of it is about listening and figuring out what people need and being able to offer that. So for me, a lot of people, I thought that they would want kind of the actual video editing and content editing and things like that, but I found that people really just don't know where to start with coming up with a strategy. And so for me to be able to actually come up with a strategy for them, that's where the money lies actually. And so it's been interesting for me to see that actually the services that I'm offering, the ones that I thought would be, another one is web design. I thought that loads of people would want websites, but actually people don't really care, and they're more interested in, like, well, obviously they do care, but my clients were more interested in getting their social media up and off the ground. And a lot of the time they came to me already with a website, but they didn't have any social media. So it's just, yeah, figuring out where the need is and being able to offer that and pivot and being flexible with that.
Amazing. And then, so there's a question here. Obviously, things are becoming increasingly digital, and building authentic connections can be a bit more difficult if things are all online. So how can you maintain genuine relationships in your like personal and professional life? And how do you think like the digital world sort of plays into that?
It's really interesting actually, because I was working from home long before the pandemic. So all of my connections, all of my professional networking and everything has pretty much been online because I was working from home, because all of my clients were all over the place. And I've got such close clients who have become quite good friends as well, that are living in continents I haven't actually met in person. So yeah, it's one of those things that I think is definitely possible. It's just about being consistent in your communication with these people. So following up, if you kind of are in an online webinar with somebody and they ask an interesting question, responding to that and making sure that they notice you in that sense. So you might, you know, I've seen like a lot of interactions and conversations happening in the chat, which I think is really cool, because it's true, like these connections can happen online in any situation, but it's just about yeah, just following through in the same way that you would in person. So if you met somebody at an in-person networking event, you would want to contact them probably online to follow up and make that connection into a relationship, and see how you can continue talking to that person. So in the same way you would do that online. And I think the genuineness really just comes from not trying to come across in a specific way, and it's just more about being very clear about who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And just those kind of three key elements is the core of any networking, really.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. The next question. So you mentioned that you had maybe some like bad clients, and that taught you as much as having good clients did. So can you give an example of like a lesson that you learned from having a bad client?
Yeah, actually, one lesson is that I wouldn't let clients haggle with me for my price. So if people, you know, ask you how much service will quote, and I have to say my services were vastly under priced at the time as well. So it wasn't that I was charging top dollar, but if a client comes to you and says, you know, I really want to work with you, but is too expensive for me. Can you put the price down? At the time, I just wanted to be able to help this person because they needed my services. And so I thought, yeah, okay, fine, I'll give you a discount. But the truth is that once you give a discount to people, they see you as that new value rather than as the original value. And so they will then, yeah, it just kind of lets clients know that your boundaries are negotiable. And so then you'll get, you know, late night emails and things like that, which is like, you know, expecting new work or changing the boundaries of what the project is and things like that. So I would stay like, you know, stay firm in what your professional boundaries are. So for example, I don't communicate with clients on WhatsApp because I feel like WhatsApp is something that I use to communicate with my friends and family, and I'd rather keep it on email, or if they use other channels like Slack, then I'll join their Slack. But WhatsApp for me is just a very personal platform, and I don't really like merging the two. So things like that, just like, yeah, that's a key way to keep client relationships good, because I do think also it's not necessarily a bad client, it's just about how you manage the client relationship, which sends signals to them, which means that they could turn into a bad client very quickly. Yeah.
Sure. That's great, thank you. And I guess maybe a similar question is, what kind of like problems or failures have you experienced, and how did you overcome those and grow from them?
That's a really good question. I think for me, problems have been kind of more internal. So it's been kind of feeling very overwhelmed, and kind of second guessing whether I can do something. And then that means that I've kind of been a little bit like kind of frozen and not as productive as or like not offered as good of a service as I would, you know, like to be able to do. And that's probably come from accepting too many things too quickly, or alternatively it's been about not being able to step back and think about, and this again is very early on, so I can completely see like with 2020 vision in hindsight that where the problem was. But when you're in the situation, obviously it's a lot more difficult. But being able to step back and figure out what the problem is and what you need to learn how to do in order to be able to overcome that problem. So, you know, for me, I took on a client who wanted a lot more PR work, so working with journalists to get kind of placements in newspapers or magazine articles to promote their product. And that isn't something that I had done before, but I said that I could do it. And now I feel like I would I mean, I do have a freelancer who specializes in PR who I would then kind of outsource that work to. But another alternative is to actually take some time before you accept a client to learn how to do that work and to do it well before you're charging for it. Or alternatively, you can agree to do that for the client, but maybe for free because you're learning on the job, and so that they can understand if they're willing to trust you with that. So yeah, there's always a few different solutions, and it's just about figuring out what solution works for that client.
Perfect. Yeah, that's been loads and loads of questions. I think we only have time for one more. So let's finish on this question of, you like to watch lots of TV, you've told us. So what is your favorite TV show?
Oh, you know what? That's a really difficult one because I like kind of like the dark dramas, but I also like the sitcoms and comedies. So it just depends on what mood I'm in. But one of my comfort shows is obviously The Office, because it is just a classic, the American Office rather than the UK Office. But one of the, actually, because we're talking about entrepreneurship, one of my favorite storylines in that is when, I don't know how many of you watch The Office, but one of the main characters goes off and starts his own competing business. And it's just such an accurate representation of what it's like to actually start up your own business, because it's chaotic behind the scenes, but you're trying to present it as this professional front, and sometimes you succeed in that. And yeah, there's just all of these different balls that you're juggling and things like that. So yeah, definitely a favorite. And then when it comes to kind of the darker side of things, there's too many to choose from, but I've just I'm trying to think actually. Yeah, I would say things like The Good Wife, which is a lot about kind of legal drama, and it's set in Chicago, and it's quite old, but I just finished it. And yeah, kind of things that take you completely out of your space and out of your place, and it's escapism. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the new season of Squid Games as well, whenever it comes out.
I agree. And you've got lots of people agreeing with you on The Office. So I hope your TV choices feel validated. But yeah.
Sorry, just another one.
Okay.
Only Murders in the Building. I've really enjoyed that. It's just finished its 3rd season, and that's like a good combination of comedy and the dark murder mystery stuff. So yeah.
Amazing. I definitely have loads of new recommendations. Well, thank you to absolutely everyone who's submitted questions. And thank you so much, Sabreen. You've been incredible. I'm sure if you can see in the chat, loads of people who have taken loads from the session and said it's been really insightful. So a really, really great way to kick off our BizCon today. So thank you so much for your time. And if everyone wants to give a virtual round of applause for Sabreen. But yeah, bro, thank you so much. And we'll be moving on to our next session.
Great, thank you, and hope you have a great conference. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Sweet. Thanks, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed the session. I especially loved the whole myth